you. Well, thank you. What an honor to be with all of you this evening. Now, you can call me Governor Kristin Noem from South Dakota, or you can just call me Christy. But I would say that what? VP? Oh, my goodness. You guys are a mess. Listen, we all need to decide here tonight. We need just President Trump to win, don't we? And we are all in to do whatever it is that he needs us to do. Whatever he needs us to do. One of the greatest titles that I have, though, is Grandma. And I got to babysit my 3 little grandbabies yesterday. They're all under the age of 3, from my oldest daughter and son-in-law, Kyle, and so I am exhausted. Have you had 3 children under the age of 3 recently? It was so much fun. We sang all the Frozen songs, all of them, all day long. But it was kind of interesting because one of the songs that little Miss Addie, I call her Miss Addie, her name's Adeline West, and I call her Miss Addie, was the Let It Go. Let it go, and I am more than happy to let President Joe Biden go. Right? Let it go. Don't hold it back anymore. That's what I was thinking all day. So I texted my husband tonight, and I said to him, you're not going to believe this, but I'm listening to Pastor John Hagee and his beautiful wife, Diana, are here tonight, and he said, you don't have to speak after him, do you? I said, well, he's not speaking, he's preaching, is what he's doing tonight. But what an honor. We have watched you and followed your ministry for decades. I remember being a young girl, and my dad honoring you and loving you and your ministry. Thank you for being bold and speaking truth. I'm just going to tell a little anecdote. I haven't even started my speech yet, so look at this. I am got a little bit of Trump in me. Like the teleprompter is sitting there going, are you going to start at any point? This last week, I spent an afternoon with a bunch of teenagers. They were kids in our foster care program. And they were 14 to 17 years old. There was hundreds of them. And they are never going to be adopted. So what we were doing as the state of South Dakota and our Department of Social Services is we were teaching them how to live independently. And I remember when I walked into the gymnasium to talk and spend time with these young adults, I saw anger on their face and hurt and trauma. And I listened to their stories, and I talked to them and took their names and their addresses so I could stay in touch with them. One young boy was 14 years old, and he begged me to adopt him. And we both started crying, and he came back 4 times during that afternoon that I was with him. He said, are you sure you can't adopt me? And I said, I'm not sure I can't. I said, let me see what I can do. But I was standing there the whole time thinking about how I represent the state of South Dakota, but the work that needed to be done there needs to be done by churches and by people that love the Lord, that love these kids. And I will do all that I can do, and I will do all that my family can do. I have a family that adopts and fosters children. I grew up with a foster brother and had many foster children through our family. But Pastor John Hagee, you do it. You embrace our children, and you give them a place to get an education and to be loved, and families in crisis, and that he is a pastor that actually walks the walk. There's so many pastors that don't walk the walk, but he does. So thank you for being that example. I was told during COVID that because I was making the decisions that I was making, I had other Republican governors tell me, Christy, because you were so extreme by not shutting anything down, by not defining what an essential business was, because governors don't have the authority to tell you that your business isn't essential. Did you know that? They don't have the authority to do that. We were the only state that didn't take the elevated unemployment benefits because I said, thank you, Mr. President, but our people want to work. And they did. But I had another Republican governor tell me, when you did that, you gave us cover because you were so extreme and they were attacking you so hard. And Ralph and I were talking about this earlier, that when you make hard decisions and when you are bold and you step forward and you do like what President Trump is doing and fighting for integrity in our justice system and integrity in America and protecting our foundational, that you are giving the chance for other people to be bold. So the message that I want you to get tonight before you leave here is to leave here and be bold. Do what this man has done, what his legacy has done, and what it has meant for our country for decades. Be bold. Be bold during this election cycle because you will set an example and allow other people around you to speak out that maybe are sitting quietly right now and are living in fear. And that is not what we are called to do. We are not called to live in fear. 2 Timothy 1:7 is one of the verses, I think it's actually in this speech later on. You may hear me say this twice. One of the verses that has sustained me forever is that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. So thank you, Ralph, for honoring such a distinguished individual who speaks truth and speaks boldly and stands for what is right in this country. And thank you so much for your ministry and what it's meant to so many families. All right, let's get started, should we? Now, you heard President Trump earlier today, didn't you? Wasn't that incredible to get to hear a chance to visit with him? You know, here's the situation. He is not going to quit on you, so you should not quit on him. We are in a battle, and we are in a battle for the heart of our nation, and he understands that. It is incredibly clear to him that that's what we're fighting for. We are right on our policy. We are right on our values, and we are right biblically. Now we must win the hearts and the minds of the American people. We want to see a revival of faith in 2024, a revival of a love for America. That love started as a small flame in the hearts of the founders hundreds of years ago. But it started as a hope for something that is better, a dream of a different way of life, a life of God that is always faithful and always walking alongside of you. But listen, hope isn't just wishful thinking. Hope is optimism with a plan. And faith? Well, faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things that are not seen. It is confidence and it is trust. I trust that all of you understand the importance of this election. It is no longer an election year where it's Republicans versus Democrats. It's literally about those who love America and those who are trying to destroy America. Now, we have faced incredible challenges at this point in history, but we've faced challenges before. By standing on the firm foundation of our Constitution, we have not only survived, but we have thrived. America's best days are ahead of us, and I am confident of that. And I choose to trust the Lord. I choose to trust the Lord through these challenges. Last week, I attended a change of command ceremony at our Air Force Base. Our Air Force Base in South Dakota is called Ellsworth Air Force Base, and it is the home of the B-1 bombers. It is the platform that protects our country. It most recently conducted the bombing operations that we saw in Iraq and in Syria that were in retaliation for the American lives that were lost when the terrorists attacked Tower 22, if you remember. The command sergeant major that day, Colonel Rasmussen, was retiring. And he spoke that day of that operation and how proud he was to defend America and to deliver the message that when someone attacks America, there are going to be consequences. He's a man who has relied on his faith in the fight for freedom over many, many years. You know, that ceremony that day started with this incredible prayer from the chaplain of the base. And I'd like to share some of that prayer with you, if I can. The chaplain said, speaking of this commander, may we continue to run the race that is set before us, running in the footsteps of this command sergeant major who he has run so well. And as we now say, well done, good and faithful airman, enter into the joy of your retirement. We pray that he would so live his life and order his faith that at the last he would hear from you, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master. I was so touched by that prayer. And ladies and gentlemen, we must all continue to run this race. We are all called to live. We are all called to live and to order our lives so that at the end, we might be able to hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter and enjoy into the joy of your master. While we all don't run the same race, we all do serve the same God. And as for me, my life has been devoted to defending this amazing gift that is the United States of America. I want my 3 grandbabies to grow up with the same opportunities to live in the freest nation in the world, just like I was blessed to grow up in. And if we all don't strive for that, who will? If we lose this nation, where will we go to find more opportunity? or more freedom than what we have right here at home. Therefore, it is our mantle to carry. It's our mantle to protect and to pass on the blessing of this great country to the next generation. Now, later on in that same change of command ceremony, the base commander shared a story about Sergeant Rasmussen. And what the team said about him when they summarized his leadership over the years and what he meant to that base was that they said over and over again that he showed sustained optimism in the face of difficulties. Isn't that an incredible testimony to somebody's life? That they had sustained optimism in the face of difficulties. That's what this country needs right now. We need optimism, sustained optimism, that America's best days are ahead, and we need to have faith. And we need to have faith and work to make sure that we bring that optimism to life. Now, if any of you need to find a reason to have sustained optimism, I would say all you have to do is to look at the people of my great state of South Dakota. Look at our example. South Dakota is growing, and we're thriving, and we're successful because we followed our Constitution. About a year ago, I was asked an interesting question by a group of people. They asked me back and forth some questions. They were state employees who worked for me, and I realized that most of these people in the room, there were several hundred of them, were maybe 5 or 6 layers of bureaucracy below me. So many times when I was making decisions, they probably were trying to sit in their offices or in their cubicles and figuring out, why is she making that decision? One of them stood up that day and said, Governor Noem, tell us how you make your hard decisions. How do you make the hard ones? And I thought about that for just a minute, and I said, actually, the hard decisions aren't all that hard. I said, they're easy, because I know the foundation for which every decision I make comes from. I went on to tell them about how when I first started to run for governor of our state, that it was clear that it was going to be a very different type of race than I had ever run before. Listen, I've run 13 campaigns, and I've won them all. I don't know how to lose. All I do is win. But this race, it was clear it was going to be a different kind of a battle. And it felt very different. And it kept showing up in my polling that it was a big issue that I was a woman. You see, South Dakota had never elected a woman to be their governor before. I had always been a leader. I had run our businesses. I had been a leader in our state legislature. When I was in Congress, I served on the leadership team in the House. But South Dakota had never seen a woman be the CEO. And the public wasn't quite sure that they were ready to see that. Now, I've spent my entire life in a man's world. I was usually one of the only women that was driving a semi-truck to the elevator to dump grain, working cattle as a young girl, showing up at farm policy meetings and having discussions on leadership issues that were going on in the legislature. Even during my time in Congress, I was one of the only women that was in that leadership room making a lot of the decisions on the bills that would come forward and what we would work on. Now, that was all just ordinary to me, so it was strange that in this race for governor, that for the first time I had to convince people I could do the job just because I was a woman. But I did. I won. And I remember the day that I was sworn into office as the first female governor of South Dakota. Now, much of the ceremony that day, when I was standing there, seemed very different. In fact, it was the first time it really hit me how historical the day was. Because every speech and every song was focused around the fact that I was being sworn in and inaugurated as the first female governor of South Dakota on the 100th anniversary of women gaining the right to vote in the state of South Dakota. As the speakers kept talking about it and the songs would play and they kept bringing it up, the significance of the fact that here we were just 100 years before women not even allowed to vote, we were swearing in a woman to be the CEO of the state, it suddenly hit me. And I realized this was historic. This was a big deal, and that I better not screw it up. I got nervous for the first time and started looking around the rotunda and started to notice all the young girls and all the women that were smiling because they'd never seen anybody in this position in their state before. They had never before seen someone who looked like them do something what I was about to do. So as I put my hand on my dad's Bible and I raised my right hand and I took my oath of office, and the Supreme Court Justice, Chief Gilbertson, swore me in, I realized and started to repeat the words of my oath of office, and they started to settle over me. And I realized that I really was only making two promises. The first was to uphold the Constitution of the state of South Dakota. The second was to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. Two promises. I could do that. That wouldn't be hard. I wasn't nervous about that from that moment on. From that moment on, I started asking a question every single time I had to make a decision. Is this constitutional? Do I have the authority as governor to make this decision? What authority do I not have? What is the responsibility of the people? You probably know a little bit about the decisions that I've made as governor of our state. The last several years, politicians and other states have used fear to control people. They took away people's freedom of religion when they closed churches. They took away people's freedom of assembly when they told them that they couldn't gather in groups. They took away freedom of speech by allowing social media platforms to decide what they could say and what they couldn't say. And now they're threatening our state's rights to protect our people. That has not been our story in South Dakota. During COVID, I was the only governor who never ordered a single business or a church to close. We never mandated anything to our people. We were the only state to turn down those elevated unemployment benefits because our people wanted to work. We trusted each other, and we got through the challenges together, and we were stronger because of it. One Bible verse that I consistently relied on was that 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. And every day I had to tell myself, you have a sound mind. God has given you a gift of wisdom and discernment and focus on your people. We focused on the facts and not fear. We kept our faith and we trusted in freedom and we used common sense. Now today, South Dakota is thriving. Because of the decisions that we made, we broke the record for the lowest statewide unemployment rate in the history of the nation at 1.7%. Our incomes have gone up over 30% since I've been governor. We've had an unprecedented population growth, historic revenues. We have a AAA credit rating. We have a fully funded pension system, and we've paid off all of our debts, including those of our technical schools and our universities. We were the first state to eliminate all fees for concealed carry permits. And in fact, we even pay for your federal background check. So it will not cost you a penny to exercise your Second Amendment rights in South Dakota. We do not have an income tax. We have no personal property tax. And last year, we passed the largest tax cut in South Dakota history by lowering our sales tax to 4.2%. And when the federal government tried to push a central bank digital currency down our throats, we were the very first state in the country to veto that bill and say, no way, that is not going to happen on our watch. We also love babies in South Dakota. We do. In fact, our Department of Health has no recorded abortions in the state of South Dakota last year. We have the highest birth rate in the nation. People are happy and they're having lots of babies. And I love it. And I love it. We have wrapped our arms around women and children and families in crisis, and we have helped them and loved them make wise decisions, and we are caring for moms and families who are facing tough situations. We know that unexpected pregnancies can be incredibly challenging for women. And being pro-life means walking alongside these moms, taking care of them and taking care of their babies before and after birth. Now, Joe Biden and the Democrats are the extremists on abortion. They want to get rid of the filibuster and impose abortion on demand in all 50 states. The Republican Party will not succeed by retreating from our pro-life position. We must always stand for life. We have to talk about this issue with compassion and with hope, and we have to listen. But we stand for life, and that is how we are going to win the hearts and minds of people over to our cause. Now, we are also the only state where suicide rates and mental health challenges are going down, and the only state in the country where our drug overdoses are dropping as well. You see, I believe that our people are happier because they're free. Our state motto is "Under God, the people rule." And that means that we embrace freedom and we recognize that our rights come from God. And that when we empower people, that they are happier and they can make better decisions for their families. And they realize that they were created to serve others. That is the purpose that God put in us. And when we are serving other people, we are happier. We are happier because we are fulfilling the purpose that God placed on us. Now, in South Dakota, we also focus on using common sense. And it was common sense that shutting down wasn't going to stop COVID from spreading. In fact, do you know what the number one thing is that you should have been doing to stop COVID? Wash your hands. I'm shocked by how many times I had to say, wash your hands is the most effective thing that you could have done to stop COVID. It's just common sense also in South Dakota, and I hope it is everywhere, that boys are boys and girls are girls. And that only biological girls should play in girls' sports. It's just common sense. So I passed the toughest law in the nation to make sure that our girls would be protected. And many states have used our legislation as model legislation to ensure that it can withstand any challenge that it may face in courts. Listen, we are not going to let mediocre men take away opportunities from our exceptional women. And it's just common sense that parents know what's best for their own kids. In South Dakota, we're defending parental rights in education. We worked with Hillsdale College to set in place the gold standard on social studies education. Our students will learn a true and honest American history, and they will not be indoctrinated in our public schools. And if parents decide that public schools are not the right route for their children, well, we're going to make sure that we honor that as well. And we're passing some of the best laws in the country to guarantee that parents can teach their own kids. And it's just common sense that they have the opportunity to do that and give them the education that their children deserve. I wish that we had more common sense from our elected officials in Washington. You know, leadership has consequences. And boy, are we living with the terrible consequences of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's horrible leadership. We shouldn't look to Congress for the answers. The gridlock on Capitol Hill is not going to break in time for us to save America. We need a president who will lead. And I have always believed that the president that we need is President Donald J. Trump. We need a president that leads on the world stage, on the international stage, so that we can have peace through strength. We do not have that today. President Trump exhibited peace through strength when he was in the White House, and the results were incredible. We were going after China and trade. We were putting America first. We were bringing in billions into our economy for the first time in decades. Russia's influence over Europe and the global energy market was diminishing. We were signing historic peace agreements in the Middle East, and America was respected. Now, ever since Joe Biden came into the White House, he's been showing weakness on the world stage. China's been emboldened. Russia's attacking their neighbors. America is a laughingstock among world leaders, and we have our greatest enemies, such as Russia and North Korea, creating historic partnerships to prepare to take America out. We know that they want to be the world power, and we know that the only thing standing in their way is the United States of America. And when America has a weak leader, America looks weak, and they plan to take advantage of that opportunity. The best example of this dichotomy is Israel. President Trump was the strongest ally Israel has seen in a very, very long time. So many presidents in the past promised and they talked about moving the Israeli embassy to its rightful place in Jerusalem, but only President Trump actually did it. Under his leadership, the Abraham Accords were signed, and for the first time in a long time, peace actually broke out in the Middle East. But how quickly things can change. Just a few short years later, we are further away from peace than ever. Biden lied about a deal between Israel that actually protected, and that deal propped up Hamas. And then he slow-rolled military aid to Israel. And when Prime Minister Netanyahu pointed out that they weren't getting the aid, the Biden administration got mad at Bibi for pointing it out. Biden demands to know what all the military aid will be used for, and he tries to dictate military strategy when he couldn't even pull out of Afghanistan with any kind of strategic thought. But with Ukraine, well, they don't make them jump through the hoops. They just keep giving them money. When Zelensky demands more money from America and he says that they need more, Biden cheers. When Bibi says, the only democracy in the Middle East, by the way, that he's derided, and the United States and the White House cancels meetings. As God told Abraham in Genesis 12, when he promised to make this people into a great nation, the nation of Israel, he said, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you will be cursed, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Well, Donald Trump blessed Israel, and he built relationships in the region, and through that work, America was blessed. And when we have a strong president, America is respected on the world stage. We're respected by our enemies. We should never take for granted and never take the side of the terrorists or pander to their activist mouthpieces who do not speak truth and seek death and destruction. We must all remember and we must speak boldly about how unjustified and horrific October 7th was. We should never let those who try to deceive us to portray it as something other than what it was. It was a terrorist attack and a horrific attack on the nation of Israel. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Wisconsin, and I met a gentleman there whose name was Kevin, and he happened to be the youngest hostage that was taken by Iran in November of 1979, when Jimmy Carter was president. Do some of you remember that event when it was back then? You don't want to admit your age, do you? No, but those hostages were held by Iran for 444 days, while Jimmy Carter talked and negotiated and was a weak president and a weak leader, and he could not and did not get them released. But the day Ronald Reagan was sworn into office, the hostages were released. Iran recognized that there was a new sheriff in town and that he was strong and that he was going to take action. Now today, along with other hostages being held, we also have Americans that are being held hostage by Hamas. It's my firm belief that once President Trump is back in the White House, those Americans are going to be coming home on that day. Listen, the fight to restore America is going to be very tough, but we have been through hard days before. You think about what our founding fathers did and what the colonists did years and years ago. When they decided to fight for our freedom, they were deciding to take on the strongest and the meanest military machine in the world, and they did not know that they were going to win. In fact, I'm convinced that they probably thought they were going to lose. They were farmers, they were ranchers, small business owners and families who literally picked up their personal hunting rifles and their muskets and went to war with a great military machine and a king who was determined to destroy them. But they acted in faith, with courage and with bravery. just because they wanted to be free. Now, the founders signed a Declaration of Independence declaring our nation free from the tyrannical power, but when they did so, they invoked nature's God, our Creator, who endowed us with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And just after signing that foundational document, Ben Franklin expressed the weight of the moment. He said, "We must all hang together, or most assuredly, we will all hang separately." They understood the gravity of the situation and the decision that they had just made. Now, it might surprise you to know that George Washington did not sign the Declaration of Independence. He was with his troops and he was out in the field with the Continental Congress when they met. And John Hancock, the first man to sign it, mailed him a copy so that he could see it. And on July 9th, 5 days after it was signed, General Washington wrote general orders to his men to gather and to come and to listen to a reading of the Declaration aloud. These are George Washington's words to the Continental Army just before they heard the beautiful Declaration of Independence for the very first time. He said, "The blessing and the protection of heaven are at all times necessary, but especially so in times of public distress and danger. The general hopes and trusts that every officer and man will endeavor to live and act as becomes a Christian soldier, defending the dearest rights and the liberties of his country." Even in that historic moment, General Washington was focused on his faith, and he encouraged his troops to do the same thing. First, act as becomes a Christian. Then, defend our rights and our liberties. The founding fathers took on what was seemingly impossible, and they won because they used their faith, and they fought for freedom. So hard days make us stronger. And I want to tell you a story about some of the belief that I have on what hard days and challenges do for people. Years ago, I met a lady whose name is Sherry. She owns a store that's called Pearls by Sherry, and she walked up to me and introduced herself to me and said, "Kristy, I want to talk to you a little bit about my store and that I have it filled with pearls and that's all that I sell." And I said, "That's really strange. I didn't realize you could have a whole store filled with pearls, and why would you do that?" And she said, "Did you know that a pearl is the only precious gem that is created by a living creature?" She said, "And in order for that pearl to be formed, that oyster has to go through something hard and something painful. And it takes that difficult thing and it turns it into something beautiful." And I said, "Oh my goodness, that's an incredible testimony of what Jesus can do in somebody's life, of what salvation is, of what God can do. He can take something that's hurtful or painful or traumatic and turn it into something beautiful and precious." But I also believe that that's how God can use challenging times, hard things in your life. Most of the time, I think people try to avoid hard things and have a perspective that they're bad for you. I would say use that hard and challenging time to create something precious, something that makes you into someone who becomes a problem solver, gives you the confidence to take on the next toughest thing that we have in front of us. Ladies and gentlemen, we must all stick together during these hard days. We are the United States of America, and we must remain united. We must trust in faith, and we must fight for our freedom. We will make America stronger, and we will make America freer than we've ever been before. I have faith that America's best days are ahead. And when you leave here, don't forget to put in the time and the effort to win the hearts and minds of the American people, and to remind them of the rights that they are gifted by their Creator. Remind them of how great America is. I am confident that you will do that. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to be with all of you. You all are great Americans, and may God richly bless you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. You have a wonderful evening.